Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole Brown, and I'm from FSET, and I'm really thrilled to be here today to talk to you about SharePoint. So SharePoint is a beast of a product through Microsoft, and we're going to spend some time learning about some of its key features. In the back half of the presentation, I'm going to spend a lot of time on what we have created as a demo site so that you can see the features in real time and not just on a PowerPoint presentation. So, a brief overview. It's really important to understand that Microsoft has a plethora of services to offer. One thing that's important to understand when we're talking about SharePoint is the distinction between OneDrive and SharePoint. So, OneDrive is a cloud storage and filing sharing designed for business, access, sharing, and collaborating on your files from anywhere. And think of it like your personal files, where SharePoint is your ability to work on an intranet, so an internal organizational site where you can store, share, manage content, knowledge, applications, teamwork, and quickly find information seamlessly and collaborate across an organization. These two products are important to understand the difference between OneDrive, think of it as yourself, and SharePoint as a group. So again, when we think about Microsoft, and we're going to spend a lot of time on SharePoint, we want to make sure that you understand that we have a SharePoint, there's OneNote, there's a calendar, there's a shared mailbox, and there's Teams. And we're going to have other webinars devoted specifically to these topics. But part of the SharePoint suite of services and what you can have available to you include the things on the screen. So we're going to start to explore. One thing that SharePoint can do for you is that it can be a communication site for your organization. So it can include lists, libraries, and pages, which I'll show you in the demo. And it allows you to be one-way communication. So for example, if there is something that you want to publish across your organization, there's an opportunity for you to have that on a landing site and it is pushed one way. The flip side of that is that you have team sites on SharePoint where you can allow folks to work together collaboratively, and it's meant for two-way communication. So these are also things that part of the SharePoint site have other functionalities other just a one-way communication site. The really important thing about SharePoint is that you have access permissions. And when we start to think about sharing documentation and collaboration and all of these things that are really important for a hybrid workforce and or dispersed or remote workforce is who has access to read something, who has access to edit, who owns the document, and further, are there things that I need or the organization may need to have other kinds of permissions based on a particular document. SharePoint allows you to do all of these custom permissions at a team level, at a document level, or at a site level. And that's really, really important when you start to think through management and historical knowledge of your organization and where you would like to have things live within your site. What we'll show you through the demo is how the navigation is built into SharePoint. So there's a global menu, and we call it the waffle menu, and I'll show you that. And then obviously site menus as well. How you can navigate and search efficiently within SharePoint, as well as pay attention to where you are within the site. One of the things that SharePoint does really well is it allows you to have libraries, which I'll show you what that means, as well as lists. And this allows us to have content really well organized for your organization without having to have all of these folders that I'm sure you're remembering, where you had a folder within a folder within a folder, and you can't find anything and you don't know how to search for it. SharePoint allows you to search very efficiently because it's it's tagging data in a different way than what we have historically called nesting folders. So libraries here, just a quick example. is a document storage. As you can see here, you can see the name of the document. You can have category filters here. So if you wanted to quickly say, I just want to search for everything finance, you click the category and it will bring everything up for just finance. You can see when it was modified. You can also see who it was modified by. So you can see tags allow customization. It's very findable and very easy. The big piece of this within this example is that you can have co-authoring. So when you start to think through, well, we have one document, we have multiple authors, instead of sending emails back and forth with multiple version histories, this is where SharePoint shines. It allows everyone to work on a document simultaneously together in co-authoring while making sure that those edits are stored in real time. And version management. So no more copies required. So how many times have you had version 15 and someone else is working on version 16, and then we have to incorporate version 15's information into the new document? Version management is really important because it allows you to be able to go back and see what the version was prior, and SharePoint allows you to do that. Lists. So lists here are ways that you can store data. So this is just an example of a work progress tracker. So if you're working on a big project or you have things that across the organization that you would want to manage, you can you can create this list to show progress and status on particular work products. There's lots of templates available. So, or you can make custom forms as well. Okay. So SharePoint. SharePoint is the collaborative cloud storage. And I think we've identified this is a collaborative space. This is where you would want to store documents in which you want to collaborate with a group of colleagues and or key documentations that are really important to your organization that shouldn't be living in a single person's file folder, right? This is something that needs to be part of the corporate memory and needs to be part of the organizational memory, and that therefore it should live in SharePoint. The files that you share in a channel are also stored in your Teams SharePoint folder. This is where SharePoint and Teams work together, and we're going to have a different conversation about that. Again, to highlight, OneDrive is where you're working on a file by yourself, and this is your personal folder, and your OneDrives are private unless you share them with others, which is particularly useful if you haven't created a team yet. So while both OneDrive and SharePoint and M365, your files are stored in the cloud. It's not sitting on your desktop, okay? And that's really important when we're thinking through, where is the data? How do I find it? What happens if something happens to my laptop? What happens if my laptop becomes corrupt? When you're working in SharePoint and OneDrive, it's in the cloud. So if you are working on something in SharePoint, and something happens to your computer, you do not have to worry that your data is gone. Files that you share in a private or group chat are stored in your OneDrive for business folder, and they're only shared with the people in that conversation. And this is where in a future webinars, we're going to talk about that OneDrive and Teams conversation, because again, these all start to play together, but we thought it was really important to start with SharePoint. And sometimes the documents that you start by yourself grow into a more important and become more relevant to a project. And when that happens, you can move and copy files from OneDrive into SharePoint. So that becomes from a personal document into a corporate or project document that really needs to live in a place for collaboration. So think of it this way. SharePoint, the files belong to the group. It's corporate or organizational. Permissioned management is central and controlled by the people who are in charge, which means someone has the authority to say, yes, A, B, and C person need to be participating, and we're going to give them access to be able to work on this document or work on this team site. You will be collaborating with others and may need more than a document repository and advanced document features, and we can talk about that. OneDrive is your file, and it's what you would like to keep private and what you want to control, and you have the ability to control who has access to it. And it's lightweight collaboration. You're not quite sure if it's a project yet or something that would need to be on SharePoint. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a minute, and I'm going to pull up the demo site. So what I want to really highlight is that SharePoint is a highly customized product. When you purchase a SharePoint license, it's not as though SharePoint comes out of the box ready for you to use it in the way that you may envision that you need it for your organization. SharePoint requires some thought about how you want to use it, how you need to communicate with your organization, how you would like your teams to think through collaboration, and how you would like to set up your work products, such as if you're working on projects or if you have financial documents you want to store, etc. It does require some pre-work. And the reason for that is because there are so many options within SharePoint that it can become slightly overwhelming if you just buy the licensing and suddenly want to have a SharePoint site. It comes pretty bare bones. The demo that I'm going to show you has no customer data. It is a complete demo site. Everything I'm showing is the art of the possible. Let's say it that way. Okay. So the first thing you see here is the landing site. And when we land into SharePoint, this is what we were talking about, the one-way communication. As an organization, if there were things that you wanted your staff to see every day when they logged in, this is where you would want to put that information. So you can see, for example, we have things over here as a dashboard. So 11 days off I currently have for my availability for my PTO. You have FAQs about SharePoint and 365. You know, the next holiday would be November 25th. That's American Thanksgiving. And so these little widgets are customizable to the organization and even the individual if they so choose. Over here, what you'll see is these banners across the top. So who are we? And you can see tons of information here. Each one of these drop downs is a site. And that's the language that we use. This is a site. If I scroll, you can see more. So there's events happening. Oh, that sounds fun. We can check that out. If I wanted to find something like my policies or tech help, I have the ability to find resourcing within SharePoint to lead me to where some information. And we also have, just for fun, a recruitment tracker. So I'll click in here. So this is a site. And this is just an example of a list that I showed you. So this list shows that there's some recruitment happening, and we have Abhijit. The position is a designer. It's a new application. I'm the recruiter, application date, phone screening, etc. If I click into this, let's see what we find. So you can see that this is the list. I can edit. And let's say we're going to put her on hold. Save. And what you see is that in real time, I've been able to do something on recruitment, and this is available to whom has permissions to see it. So if you're not a part of HR, you wouldn't see this documentation because you don't have permissions to see it. If I go back and click H, it's going to take me back to the landing. Okay. So as I scroll down here, you can see, again, highly customizable. This is a company feed. So for example, if you wanted to have your strategy or your vision or a particular video for all staff to see, this is where you would put it. You can also see company news, company events, culture, etc. If I go to this waffle menu, this is the app launcher, and I want to show you how this works. So remember when I talked about OneDrive and SharePoint and Teams? This is how it all connects with SharePoint, is in this waffle menu. And we're not going to get into it today, but what's important to highlight is that this waffle menu is where you go to get all of your other tools that are connected to SharePoint. So I'm just going to back out of this. So I'm on my home screen. So I'm going to go right here. This is what my personal home screen. Okay. So what you can do is you can say, well, I work in a particular group and I always need to see that information. And I always want to see landing. So I'm going to favorite it so that when I launch, I always will see that and I don't have to go hunting for it because that's not any fun. And I'm part of the HR team. So I'm going to say new employee onboarding is really important to me as well. Okay. So if I go back to home and I go to landing, and it will always refresh for you. And I go back to my start, my sites. Here we go. Let's go to my sites. Do you see right here? It says new onboarding, new employee onboarding. So this is my site. These are all the places that I frequent. So I can favorite it and follow it so that I have quick navigation to go find that particular site. So let's take a look at one of these sites. So I'm going to go into the leadership team. And what you'll see here is that for fun, what we have is 13 people are allowed to have access to this. What the point of SharePoint is it's transparency and organization, okay? If you scroll over, you will always see this little icon. You'll be able to see who is participating in the group membership, and it will load. Give it a second. There you go. And you can see who the administrator is, who the members are, and if you are the administrator, you can add members. The other thing that you can see here are documents. So this is really the big power of SharePoint is as teams, you can collaborate and work on things together. So this is leadership accountability. So you can see we've got some key documents in here. So strategic objectives, and it's going to go ahead and open for me. What you've just seen here is that it's opened in PowerPoint. Remember right over here where we talked about that waffle menu and all the M365 tools? What you're seeing is it's pulling in those tools from M365 right into SharePoint. So you don't even have to think about what to open the document in. So because it's in SharePoint and I have access, I, in real time, can make edits and go back. Oh, and I deleted it. But you see my point. I can, in real time, in a document, make edits for my team to see. And if I go back to my leadership home, what you would find is I have made a modification to this document. And had I not deleted it, we would go back and we would see that it's still there. Okay. So now let's go back and see some other things. So we've already said, okay, I've made some quick hits on what I want to see. What else can I do? So I want to see the news that's coming through from my organization. I can quickly say, I'm going to just scroll through and say, I want to take a look at the new 401k package. But please stop by AHR to pick up your new documentation, and then these packets will contain everything that you need. This is a way for you to push content and push information out without using email. How many of us have a huge inbox full of information that you really doesn't need to be in an email? When we think about email historically has been used to use as a communication tool for things that don't really need to be in an email. SharePoint allows you to start moving away from using email as a method of communication and using email as a way to what it was intended for, which was information for a question or something like that. SharePoint allows you to do this in a more effective way. Okay, so I'm going to go back here to my home. The other thing that I want to state about really the amazing benefits of SharePoint is when you have, or if you wanted to be more advanced and mature with the tool, you have the ability to start using things called flows. And flows are think of it as maybe your piece of paper that you have floating around the office in a folder that for sign off that moves from person to person to person. You can do that electronically through SharePoint. And that's where you start to see collaboration take place in a really meaningful way. The other thing that you can do, let me find it, is on your policies. So how many of us say we need to read policies and we need a way to audit that, but there's not a great way to do it? When using SharePoint, there is the ability to actually have a marked red button so that you have the ability to audit and also track that employees have read what they've said that they have read. And this is important for a whole host of reasons, but it's a far more efficient than doing it on the old paper way or using a Word document and having them sign. You can do it electronically, and then you can actually audit that process. Again, SharePoint is highly, highly powerful. You've got analytics, so you can start to see who's looking, what time of day they're looking. You can see when information is being disseminated and when it's being consumed. But the most important part of it is the collaborative features. And I think when we start to think about teams and SharePoint, this is where it begins to sing. Because you can say finance, HR, operations, etc., or maybe a special project group, we're going to collaborate on SharePoint. We have a way to communicate via Teams, and all of our documentation related to the particular team or project has a place to live, and it's not in someone's personal files. So if they get sick or win $1 million, that you're not scrambling trying to look for historic information, which in corporate memory starts to walk out the door, which is the biggest fear for any organization.